On February 28th, we have a new moon in the sign of Pisces. Let's have a chat about the general horoscope, the general energy for this new moon, and then we'll get into each of the rising signs. During a new moon, we are usually starting a new chapter. We are beginning something brand new. We might not feel ready yet to take steps, and everything might not be clear yet, but there's still this underlying feeling of inspiration and an underlying feeling of something new is brewing underneath the surface. And especially because this new moon is in the sign of Pisces, we might especially feel in touch with our intuition. We might especially feel like our spidey senses are on alert. And specifically because this is a new moon in Pisces, we might also feel like we are starting a fresh new chapter where we can let go of our ego, where we can keep in perspective that there is more to life than just this material world that we see in front of us. One caveat about this new moon is that it will be squaring Jupiter. When we go through each of the rising signs, we'll go through what exactly that means for each of them. But in the general horoscope, it's more about being careful not to say yes to too many things, being careful not to overdo things and overindulge. Whenever we see Jupiter and the moon contacting each other, we do see good feelings flowing. But because there is now a square between Jupiter and the moon, we can see that there's maybe a tendency to overdo it, to overindulge, to maybe do things because they feel good, but we haven't really put too much thought into them. We're just following from this blind feeling. And especially because the moon will be a fast moon during the 27th to the 29th, so during the new moon, there's especially that feeling of, yes, let's just move fast, let's say yes, let's respond quickly. So definitely a word of caution not to maybe just slow yourself down a little bit because there's definitely an energy of let's go, we're feeling inspired, we're feeling ready. And honestly, Pisces as well as a zodiac sign, it deals with uncomfortable feelings by escaping. So there definitely might be a tendency during this new moon to do that as well. But now let's get into each of the rising signs so we can get a little bit more specific on what you can expect. So for Aries rising and Aries sun signs, the new moon takes place in your 12th house. This means that you're starting a new spiritual chapter. And especially when we see Pisces in the 12th house, which is true for you, Aries, we see spirituality take on this perspective of being open to feeling others' feelings, being open to feeling the pain and the sadness of the rest of the world. It doesn't sound very nice when I explain it. And of course, if we get lost in those feelings, it can definitely feel quite heavy. But there is definitely a sort of a new chapter for you here, Aries, where it's realizing that actually opening yourself up to these more uncomfortable emotions that are taking place in the rest of the world can actually be a way to bring more perspective to your life, a way to bring more spiritual fulfillment to your life as well. During this new moon, Jupiter is also squaring the new moon. Jupiter is squaring it from the 3rd house. So I want you to be especially mindful of the communication that you do around this new moon. I can imagine that perhaps you are opening up to others, talking to them about the things you're feeling, perhaps how attuned you feel to the pain in the rest of the world. And that can probably feel really, really good. Again, Jupiter and the moon contacts make us feel good. But just be very mindful not to overindulge in that, not to over communicate, start telling every little detail to others, without necessarily putting thought into it first. Putting thought into, who am I talking to? Do they really need to know this? What effect is this going to have on them? What effect is it going to have on me as well? For Taurus risings and Taurus sun signs, the new moon on the 28th takes place in your 11th house, which means that you are starting a new chapter of spiritual connections, deep spiritual connections with your friends. You might especially feel like you are so attuned to what your friends are going through, what they're feeling, and in a sense that also helps you get a more zoomed out, better perspective of what life is all about. Jupiter is squaring the new moon from your second house, so be very, very mindful. I know you're probably feeling quite loving towards your friends during this time, but be very mindful of spending large sums of money to help your friends in some way. Not that this is something that is bad, or you shouldn't trust your friends. As a matter of fact, it might feel really good to help your friends financially, but just slow down a little bit and just put a bit of thought into it before you go ahead and do it. For Gemini sun signs and Gemini rising signs, the new moon takes place in your 10th house, which means that you are feeling inspired with your career. And specifically, you're probably feeling inspired or you're getting inklings of how you can incorporate your more sensitive side, your intuition in your career. Perhaps you find a new role, a new position that allows you to get in touch and use that side a lot more in your work. Or perhaps it's within your current role and you're seeing a way that you could incorporate these parts of you a little bit better. Be very mindful that Jupiter is squaring the new moon from your first house, which is, the house of leadership. And while it probably feels wonderful to lead with this newfound intuition, newfound sensitivity, be very careful that you don't overdo it and that you maybe start leading or start putting yourself in a leadership position without much thought, not really considering, okay, do these people even need my opinion? Did they ask for it? Is this a group or is this a project at work that I actually do want to be the leader of? It will feel very good to be a leader, to step into this powerful position, to lead with your intuition. Just put some thought into it, please, before you go ahead and do it. For Cancer risings and Cancer sun signs, the new moon takes place in your 9th house of education and travel. So you're probably feeling inspired on future studies you can take or future travel you can do, and specifically the spiritual aspects of them. Perhaps there is a spiritual course that you come across during this new moon that you want to take. Perhaps there is a new way of travel or a new travel partner that you are getting in touch with that allows you to travel while allowing space for your more sensitive side, allowing space for your intuition. Perhaps you used to travel with this one friend who always loved to plan everything, but all of a sudden during the new moon, you take a trip with another friend and you realize that friend is a lot more fitting with your travels, is a lot more fitting as a travel companion, giving you the space and the time to travel with intuition, to let your intuition and feeling lead you along the path as you're traveling together. Jupiter is squaring the new moon from your 12th house. So I want you to be careful not to overindulge in thoughts and feelings and letting go of ego. The 12th house is the house where we let go of ego. It's also the house where we spend a lot of alone time and we don't necessarily take actions. We're letting go of things. So I want you to be careful that while it does feel good to fantasize and philosophize about the travels you're going to do, or maybe about different topics you're learning about, do please keep in mind that at the end of the day, we also do really need ego to survive in this world, to survive as humans, and we also do really need to take actions eventually. For Leo risings and Leo sun signs, the new moon takes place in your 8th house, which means that you're feeling inspired to open up to others, to be honest, and to show maybe a bit of your ugly side, the side that you don't show to others. You are starting to realize, you're getting a glimpse of the fact that it's sometimes the greatest form of spirituality. If we can connect to somebody by really speaking ourselves freely, by telling them the things that we think inside our mind that we don't share with anybody. Jupiter is squaring the new moon from your 11th house. So be very mindful of how you connect with your friends during this time. It will probably feel really, really good to connect with them. So definitely don't let me stop you. However, be mindful of oversharing or over-trusting. Because of that square with Jupiter, it can lead to a bit of overindulgence. Just make sure that you put some thought into it before you go ahead and connect with certain friends, or before you go ahead and, spill your entire heart out. For Virgo risings and Virgo sun signs, the new moon takes place in your 7th house. This means that you're starting a new chapter in your relationship, and particularly a more deeper connected spiritual connection with your partner. It could mean that you are also getting a lot more attuned to their emotions. You're quite sensitive to their emotions as well. And during this new moon, we're also having that square from Jupiter. Jupiter is in your 10th house. So be very mindful of how much you sort of flaunt or put your relationship out into the public world. That could be by talking about it with others. It could be by posting about it on social media. It could happen that it really feels good to do that at this time. But if you don't put the thought into it before doing it, it could happen that it leaves the two of you open too much to just the energies of others and others' opinions and thoughts. For Libra risings and Libra sun signs, the new moon takes place in your 6th house, which means that you're feeling inspired when it comes to your routine. You are starting a new chapter where it's almost like dedicating yourself to a schedule, dedicating yourself to a routine, maybe even dedicating yourself to a skill that you sort of consistently have to show up for, consistently, day by day, the dedication of it builds up to something. You see how that is actually almost the ultimate spiritual practice for you. By dedicating yourself to this routine, to this craft, to this practice, this is how you're able to get in touch with something greater. This is how you're able to let go of the petty things of the material world and get a larger sense of the meaning of life, if we may call it. During this new moon, we also have Jupiter squaring the new moon from the 9th house. So do be very mindful in the overindulgence that you do when it comes to, spiritual philosophies or spiritual education. Jupiter squaring the moon means that probably diving into these, spiritual heritages, spiritual books, courses probably feels very good. It's probably feeding your soul at this time. Just to put a little bit of thought into it before just jumping into something. For Scorpio risings and Scorpio sun signs, this new moon takes place in your 5th house, which means that you are seeing your self-expression as the ultimate form of spirituality. You find that your spiritual practice is, instead of becoming meditation or journaling, your spiritual practice is about being lost in the flow of doing something that brings you joy. Being lost in the flow of dancing, of coloring, of painting. Being lost in the flow of things that also allow you to express yourself freely. Jupiter is squaring the new moon from the 8th house. So do be very mindful that these pleasurable activities, while they do get you in touch with something greater, be very mindful that they do not become obsessive. For Sagittarius risings and Sagittarius sun signs, the new moon takes place in your 4th house, which means that you're probably coming across some revelations, you're getting some revelations as to the importance of your upbringing and the way it has shaped you today. And more specifically, how important it is to look at how you were raised, look at the dynamics when you were a child, as a way to be able to become more spiritual, as a way to be able to get in touch with something greater, to be able to let go of the petty things of the material world, and to be able to connect, become in touch with your more sensitive and intuitive side. And because Jupiter is squaring this new moon from your 7th house, be also quite mindful of overindulging in your partner during this time. Especially if you're really mulling over your upbringing, it might feel really nice to seek that safety, seek that comfort in your partner without putting much thought into it. And the caution here is not don't do it, don't talk to your partner, don't seek safety in them. But it's a little bit more about putting thought into it without just jumping into it and overdoing it. For Capricorn risings and Capricorn sun signs, the new moon takes place in your 3rd house, which means that you're starting a new chapter with your communication. And you might especially become aware during the new moon the effect that your words can have on others, the fact that you can express your more sensitive and intuitive side with your words, with what you say and how you communicate, and how that can also really have an effect on others, helping them in some way, but also helping you in some way, helping you to zoom out, keep perspective of what's going on beyond this material world. Because Jupiter is squaring the new moon from your 6th house, which is about tradition and routine, be very mindful that you're not just repeating the words from the spiritual upbringing that you had. You're not just repeating the words that you heard, when counselors or therapists were talking to you. Be sure that you are that you're really thinking about what you're saying and that you are doing it in your own unique way. Don't underestimate your intuition during this time. If you have a feeling that you should say something or say it in a specific way, definitely go for it. For Aquarius risings and Aquarius sun signs, the new moon takes place in your 2nd house, which means that you are feeling good about your finances. It might feel like you're starting a new chapter, and specifically a new chapter where you realize that there's actually nothing more spiritual than taking care of our money. Because when we take care of our money, then we are able to have the space, the mental capacity, the time to actually do think about what is the meaning of life, do think about what our intuition is telling us or how we're feeling. Jupiter is squaring the new moon from your 5th house, Aquarius. So because you're feeling really good about your finances and there's a square from the 5th house of pleasure and fun, I just want to caution you against overdoing it with spending money on things that bring you fun. You might feel like there's plenty in the bank, you have everything ironed out. So just do put some thought into things before you go ahead and spend money on it. For Pisces rising and Pisces sun signs, this new moon takes place in your 1st house, which means that you're starting a new chapter where you can truly be yourself. You can get more in touch with who you are and as well show that to the rest of the world. And more specifically, this is Pisces after all, we're talking about making sure you show and integrate that sensitive, intuitive side of you into your personality, into how you talk, how you dress, how you show up. Jupiter is squaring the new moon from your 4th house. So during this new moon, it will probably feel really good to spend time with your family. You might feel like it's really nourishing you. They perhaps really understand this sensitive and intuitive side from you. Just be very mindful that you don't disappear in that world, that you don't overindulge in it and use it as sort of like a distraction from actually putting in the work and showing that side to others as well, not just your family where perhaps it feels safe and secure to do that. So that's it. Those are the horoscopes for the upcoming new moon in Pisces on February 28th. I hope you all have a wonderful new moon. Make sure you check out the new moon meditation that I've also posted for this February 28th new moon. And I hope to see you again soon.